on driving much more so than you and I would. They're not able to take public transportation. So their vehicle is really an extension of their own mobility. We need to let more people know that something like this is available.
Motoring 93 is brought to you by Quaker State. Quaker State, one tough motor oil. And Midas, your under-the-car specialists for imports and domestics.
You may have noticed out in the highways that the wagon is making a comeback. And so it's not surprising that Saturn, after a successful debut of their sedan and coupes, have come out with a wagon. And you're looking at it, the brand new 1993 Saturn wagon. Nice looking car, and we'll talk more about it later on. But first, we are going to talk about driving. Now, if you drive, you have your license. But that doesn't mean that everyone really knows how to drive. And that is quite evident out in the highways where you see people, sitting in that passing lane, and then when they do move over, they don't signal. In short, I think a lot of people simply take driving for granted. Now, maybe as a result of this, we have seen a growth in advanced driving schools. Well, we're now going to visit one of those schools, and as you're about to see, this school is simply one of a kind.
For many years now, the Shannonville Motorsport Park has been home to the Nissan Advanced Driving School. This year, the school became the first in the country to welcome disabled drivers. The program is the same as it would be for able-bodied drivers, to prepare people to respond quickly and accurately to unexpected road conditions. The course also teaches people with physical and mental disabilities the limits of their physical skills, as well as those of the vehicle. Margaret Young is an occupational therapist with the Hugh McMillan Rehabilitation Center in Toronto.
Well, certainly people with disabilities are wanting to drive. There's no question about that. And of course, we're all promoting safe driving. One of the difficulties is the extraordinary cost of being disabled. And so even for us in our program to give them the numbers of hours of driver instruction that we would like to, they're limited often by funding. And so when Nissan offered to partially sponsor a course like this, we felt it was a wonderful opportunity for people to take advantage of this. We have 6 students here today, and some of them are in wheelchairs and have had a spinal cord injury. And those are driving with a mechanical hand controls, often a steering spinner, which helps to give them better control over the wheel. And they would also have some kind of a parking brake extension handle. We have 2 students who appear to be physically normal, but have been in car accidents and have had a fear of driving. And that's one of the things that they're here for, is to gain more confidence in their abilities should they get into a situation where they might need to avoid an accident.
Therefore, what is a reaction? Well, watch this. I won't throw the paper ball, but what if I was to zing it at you very fast, particularly if your attention was averted elsewhere? Now, we're not talking about baseball here, we're talking about driving. So when you're driving your car, if you're not paying attention, and all of a sudden you see something at the last minute, like me throwing the ball at you very fast, and it's up here just about to hit you in the face, you will do 2 things intuitively, immediately. What are they? Duck and close your eyes. You would duck and close your eyes. From a psychological standpoint and from a physiological standpoint, you are no longer in control of your body.
Many of them depend on driving much more so than you and I would. They're not able to take public transportation. So their vehicle is really an extension of their own mobility. And it really could mean that their livelihood could be cut off. They would not be able to do family activities, and so driving becomes extremely important.
This is a portable hand control which I use whenever I'm in flying, or when you get to an airport where there's no car equipped with hand controls. Portable, you have to be very cautious with, because they don't respond as well and as precisely as a regular hand control, which is attached underneath the steering column. As you can see on this one, all you have is 2 wing nuts by rods and by pedal, and you cannot stabilize yourself with it because you can actually shift it from one hand to the other. So portable hand controls are not for everyone. You need very good trunk muscles and balance, and very good hands and strength in your arms. Otherwise, it's very, very dangerous, and people should actually stay away from it. Get driving license, but we don't know how to handle a car when we lose control or when we're just about to lose control. So that's something we can learn here, anticipate, and be as smooth and as we can driving.
The largest factor that changes is our instructors have to learn just as much about how to teach these people as they are learning about their driving. We have our instructors climb inside the car with them and watch them perform with their adaptive devices, and really the instructors learn as much about what they're doing as the students are learning about driving.
I have a touchpad column here which allows me to start the vehicle. It allows me to turn my lights on, my steering up and down, my windows up and down. It opens and closes my lift. I also drive with a horizontal steering column which can be adjusted. It could be adjusted up and down to the right or to the left. I have zero effort steering. My gas and brake control requires all of 2 ounces of full pressure for gas or for brakes. And the button system I have along front, because I also have finger dexterity. I have my controls such as my turn signals, my windshield wipers, my horn, and my high beams all underneath my fingertips.
So large pylon, slam on the brake pedal. Once the car is skidding, full steering to the right-hand side. Once you have full steering, let go of the brakes. All right, give that a try. Release. Good.
I didn't really know what to expect from the driving school. I've heard a lot about skid schools, and I hear good things about them. But I was hoping, I've been driving for 15 years, and again, I thought I was a well-experienced driver until I came out today and I realized that there was a lot that I didn't know. And it's amazing. I mean, there's few little common sense things could, you know, maybe save my life and maybe somebody else's at the same time. I think that more people should be made aware of this type of school, and but the attitude I feel is that, you know, well, I have been driving for 20 years, I don't need that stuff, you know, but we all do. And it's not an ego thing, it's just real life.
Test Drive with Graham Fletcher.
This week on Test Drive, we look at the 1993 Toyota T100. Now, interestingly enough, this vehicle fits right in between the largest of the mid-size trucks, being the Dodge Dakota, and the full-size F-150 from Ford.
The suspension on the new T100 features a double wishbone setup in front and leaf springs in back. On the 4x4 version, Toyota have mounted the front sway bar to the upper wishbone. This increases ground clearance whilst reducing the risk of damage to the bar. Even when unladen, the on-road ride comfort is surprisingly good, and unlike so many other trucks, you don't need a kidney belt to endure the off-road ride. One option worth the money is the Goodyear Wrangler tyre package. As well as improving the amount of traction available, this larger tyre bumps the all-important ground clearance up 1 full inch. Now that inch is really appreciated when off-road. The only downside is that the step-up height into the cab is increased accordingly. For the heck of it, I ran the T100 through the pylon test. As expected, the high centre of gravity and the amount of body roll combined to stop you from becoming too enthusiastic. Having said that, the truck handled better than I had anticipated. Under the hood is a 3-litre V6 engine that produces 150 horses and 180 pounds-feet of torque. The nice part being that the high torque figure is generated at a relatively low 3,400 RPM. This means that when you need the torque, when off-road for instance, you have it and plenty of it too. Acceleration is on the sluggish side, but in fairness, this is not given top priority in this style of vehicle. For the record, we required 13.5 seconds to reach the 100k mark. As far as fuel economy is concerned,
we recorded a thirsty 15.6 litres per 100 kilometres or 18 miles per gallon during the test. Matched with this engine is a smooth shifting 5-speed manual. The ratios have been selected wisely because the first three are low, improving pull-away power, while fourth and fifth gear are fairly tall, giving a relaxed highway ride. Beside the gear lever is the four-wheel drive lever. Now, thanks to Toyota's automatic disconnecting differential, you have full shift-on-the-fly capability, meaning you can shift between 2- and 4-wheel drive at speeds of up to 80 kilometers an hour. To select four-wheel drive low, you must bring the vehicle to a halt. So if you think you will need the low range, select it before you venture off into that mud hole. It's too late to select it when you're stuck. One of the key criteria by which you judge any pickup truck is its ability to carry a 4x8 sheet. Now, I've got a 4x8 sheet of drywall, and as you can see, it fits in there with the tailgate shut. Now, not only does it fit in there, but there is actually room to spare all the way around the board. The T100 features front disc brakes and rear drum brakes. As is common nowadays, rear anti-lock brakes are standard. The use of ABS on the back brake stops the back end from sliding out if you hit the brakes mid-corner. One word of warning though, when you're in four-wheel drive, the ABS system is shut off, so be careful. During the brake test, we required 124 feet to stop from 80k. The stops themselves were straight and composed, with the pedal being easily modulated. If you read the literature on this T100, Toyota suggests that you can sit 3 abreast in the front here. Now, they've provided you with a center seat belt, but as you can see, if you go with a 5-speed four-wheel drive, there plain and simply is no legroom. And with somebody sitting here, getting into reverse gear could be rather interesting. Inside, the T100 is tastefully finished, featuring a very car-like appearance. The dash is analog and as such is easy to read and interpret. The power options are neatly housed in the left side door panel, making them easy to reach as well as use. The cruise control functions are mounted in the steering wheel, and for once in a Japanese vehicle, the on-off switch is placed where it makes sense. The center of the dash houses the heater controls and a great sounding 6-speaker stereo radio, complete with a built-in equalizer. The car-like amenities continue through the seat belts, which feature adjustable upper anchors, something not found in most trucks. Perhaps the only thing missing is a super cab version. The reason I say this is that interior storage space is at a definite premium. This Toyota T100 is, despite a couple of minor omissions, a super cab and a V8 engine for instance, one of the best pickup trucks on the road. Now, while I'll leave you with that thought, I'm going to carry on where I left off and get this thing clean so I can take it back to Toyota.
We're back with a 1993 Saturn wagon, as Saturn hopes to capitalize on the ever-growing popularity of the wagon. Under the hood, a 4-cylinder, twin-cam, 1.9-liter engine. And we've got an airbag on the driver's side. The price tag, about $17,000. A nice little package, except for one thing. You've heard Kenzie and Fletcher complain about it. Now it's my turn. It's called the automatic shoulder belt. It's annoying and it's dangerous. Imagine trying to get out of the car in a hurry like this and smack right in the back of the head. Now, obviously, the lap belt is not automatic. Now, they do have, you can hear it, little chimes that tell you your lap belt is not on. But with so many chimes and whistles in cars today, it's easy to ignore. Anyway, I got that off my chest. Now it's time to head to our Motoring 93 garage and join Bill Gardner.
Trivia question. Who's the world's largest manufacturer of 4-cycle engines? I'm going to tell you at the end of this segment, and I'll bet you 99% of you get it wrong. What I've done this week, I've borrowed a cutaway 4-cycle engine from Streetsville Secondary School. This is a lawnmower engine, and if it was installed in your lawnmower, it would sit something like this with the recoil starter up here and the blade swinging around at the bottom here. Now, I've written down the 4 distinct strokes of the piston on a 4-stroke or 4-cycle engine. And these arrows indicate the direction of piston movement. On the intake stroke, the piston moves downwards and an air-fuel mixture is drawn into the cylinder of the engine. On the compression stroke, the piston moves upwards and compresses that mixture. On the power stroke, the piston moves downwards and drives the crankshaft. And on the exhaust stroke, the piston moves upwards and expels or pushes out the spent gases or burned gases from the engine. Now if you look at the cutaway engine, you can actually see how this happens. There's the piston right there, and on the intake stroke it moves downwards, and this entire cylinder fills up with a vapor form of air-fuel mixture. Remember, it's in the gaseous form, so it's compressible. The piston comes upwards and compresses that mixture down into this tiny little clearance volume at the top here. And at the end of the compression stroke, the spark plug ignites that air-fuel mixture, and the power stroke begins. The piston is forced back down in the cylinder, and when it gets to the bottom, the power stroke is over. The piston starts to come back up, and it actually pushes out or expels the spent exhaust gases from that engine. Now, in order to accomplish this, there's some other important machinery that you need to see. These are the valves of the engine. The one on the right is the intake valve. It's opening just now. Then you're going to see the exhaust valve open on the exhaust stroke. And there's a slight size relationship between those. The exhaust valve is slightly smaller. Now, there's the camshaft and the camshaft lobes that operate these two valves. You can see the lobes coming around and the valves lifting, and there's the valve springs that keep these valves closed tightly during the compression and power stroke of this engine. Now this is my motorcycle. It's a 500cc dirt bike or off-road motorcycle, and you can see where they get the name dirt from. This thing's just covered in mud when I'm finished using it. Now, as I mentioned, 500 cc's, it's a 4-stroke or 4-cycle engine, and the interesting thing here is that this same type of a machine is available with a 250cc 2-stroke engine. It's just as powerful, maybe even more powerful than this 500, out of half the displacement, and it's about 60 or 70 pounds less. Now 60 or 70 pounds of weight reduction in a machine like this is about like taking a ton off your car. It'll make the machine much more nimble and allow it to produce higher fuel economy if it happens to be a car, because there's tremendous snowball effect to weight savings. Now, this is the next plateau that automotive manufacturers are looking at, the 2-stroke engine. They're thinking about putting them in cars. There's an outfit called the Orbital Engine Company that's refining and developing that engine for the automotive industry. The biggest stumbling block right now is cleaning up the exhaust stream of that engine, which tends to be kind of dirty. It's hard for them to meet emission control standards. But as soon as they overcome that hurdle, you'll probably see one in a passenger car. And getting back to my trivia question, world's largest manufacturer of 4-cycle engines, the Honda Motor Company. And the ironic thing is that the founder of the Honda Motor Company, Soichiro Honda, swore that he'd never produce a 2-cycle engine. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 93.
Motoring 93 now has a limited supply of high-quality sweatshirts, t-shirts, and baseball caps, all featuring the Motoring 93 logo. They're a great wardrobe addition for all motoring enthusiasts, for yourself, or as a gift for someone special. For more information or to order, just call this toll-free number, 1-800-461-0362. Nobody's comparing it to the ill-fated Edsel, but the Cadillac Allante is about to end its short-lived career. The Allante will disappear at the end of the 1993 model year, a victim of General Motors' budget cutbacks. Seen here as an earlier Motoring 93 test drive, the Allante was launched in 1987. Since then, fewer than 400 cars have been sold in Canada, with the best year going in 1988 when 144 of them were sold. The car was built in Italy, flown over in a 747, and assembled in North America. An expensive procedure that was reflected in the price. List price on the 93 model in Canada, $72,000. One of the hottest cars of 1993 is Chrysler's LH models. And until now, all the cars have been assembled in Bramalea, Ontario. With demand strong for the LH models, it was hoped that a third shift would be added, but Chrysler has decided to move assembly work to Delaware. Chrysler believes it can build more than 90,000 cars a year at the U.S. plant, while a third shift at Bramalea could add no more than 60,000 vehicles. The U.S. plant will start with Intrepids, but could have the Vision and Concorde models added later. The Bramalea plant can produce 960 cars a day with 2 shifts, or about 200,000 a year.
Our Midas tip of the week concerns wiper blades. Very important to the best safety of your vehicle to have good quality wiper blades that are in good condition. Now, for the most part, you can say that the proof of the pudding is in the eating. If they're working well, they're probably in pretty decent shape. But it's not a bad idea to make a periodic inspection, and it's pretty easy to do. In most cases, you just depress a little tab or a spring and pull the blade off the arm. You can actually inspect it and make sure that it isn't frayed or torn at the ends. Now, the rubber in a wiper blade will degrade pretty quickly because of the sun and the elements. Now, this is a winter type wiper blade, and it's a metal frame blade that's been covered with a thin rubber boot to protect it from bunging with the snow. Now, I'm going to suggest to you that if you're using this type of a wiper blade on your vehicle, you restrict its use to the winter months only. This is the stock type of wiper blade that comes in most vehicles. It's a stainless steel frame, and in most cases, it's refillable pretty easily by just depressing a little bayonet connector and sliding the refill out. You can buy a pair of refills pretty inexpensively, and you can replace them yourself. That's your Midas tip of the week.
Kenzie's Corner with Jim Kenzie.
This is Cadillac's new North Star V8 engine. As you can see, it has 32 valves, it's got 4 camshafts, and 295 horsepower. It's available on Allante, Eldorado, and on this Seville STS. Now, not surprisingly, this engine was developed in response to competition from Lexus and Infiniti, who have 4-cam V8s, and not surprisingly, Lincoln's not far behind. This year they too have a 4-cam 32-valve V8. It's only got 280 horsepower, but it's still enough to make their new Mark 8 a real mover. Now, this kind of horsepower race is something we haven't seen for a long time. The first one was back in the 50s when Cadillac and Oldsmobile and then Lincoln and Packard were all trying to get more and more power out of their engines. That race was put to a halt when Chrysler came out with their unbeatable 426 Hemi. Then in the 60s, we had the muscle cars. We ended up with intermediate sedans with enough torque to run a North Sea trawler. Now, fuel economy concerns in the 70s pretty much put an end to horsepower races, and in the 80s, our fixation was on emissions control. But for the 90s, power is back. Now, the interesting thing is that these engines all meet the emission standards of the day, and they get surprisingly good fuel economy. But you know, the Seville with this engine has a 0 to 100 kilometer time of maybe 3 seconds better than the base engine. And that means if you're driving from Calgary to Edmonton, you're going to get there about 3 seconds sooner. Now, is it really worth it? Instead of coming up with engines that have mind-blowing performance with adequate fuel economy and adequate emissions control, why don't the car companies put those resources in developing an engine that has adequate performance but mind-blowing fuel economy and mind-blowing emissions control? That would be a more appropriate engine for the 90s. Now, just on the off chance that the car makers take my advice, I better go have my fun while I can. I'm Jim Kenzie.
Whenever I hear the word station wagon, it brings back fond memories of my dad's '56 Ford wagon. I'll tell you, it did a great job in hauling us 4 kids around, and the color of this car, a brilliant yellow. We thought not only was the color cool, but our dad was pretty cool too. Anyway, who would have ever thought back in '56 that today in the 90s, a station wagon would come as small as this Saturn wagon? Well, I wonder if they had this car in brilliant yellow. Anyway, that's it for this week. Next week, among other things, Graham Fletcher is going to test drive this Saturn wagon, and we'll also have a look at selling cars in the 90s. Boy, has that changed. That's next week as we bring you more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
Motoring 93 has been brought to you by Quaker State. Quaker State, one tough motor oil. And Midas, your under-the-car specialists for imports and domestics.